Hello, and welcome to The Executive Appeal, a show that convenes the world's most powerful and successful leaders to share mentoring and career advancement advice to help you successfully transition into senior level executive positions. I'm your host, Alex Tremble, award-winning speaker, author, and leadership expert with over a decade of experience coaching and advising some of our nation's most senior level government leaders. So if you're ready to reach your goals, let's get started. Hey, welcome, you ambitious, beautiful leaders to another power-packed episode of the Executive Appeal Podcast. And I'm your host, Alex D. Tremble, and I'm thrilled to have you joining us here today. Look, this podcast is where we go beyond the ordinary, moving past the cliches of just work hard, and one day you'll hopefully, possibly, someday, possibly, if you keep your fingers crossed and legs crossed and all those things, you'll make it to success. We know that's not true here. So today we're going to be focusing, as always, on the true secrets of success at the executive level positions. And by the way, if you did not know, which I know I'm sure you are, I am not only your amazingly handsome podcast host, I am also an international prolific keynote speaker and executive coach, and the CEO of GPS Leadership Solutions. So if you're seeking an engaging and a motivational speaker for your next event, look no further. I've had the privilege of addressing audiences around the world, sharing insights that go beyond the surface and leave a long-lasting approach in impact. Whether it's developing meaningful relationships with your teams, mentors, clients, and fellow executives, or if your focus is on providing your audience with the strategies required to achieve exceptional success and results in the face of life's complex challenges, then we've got you covered. Don't miss out on your opportunity today to elevate your team and stakeholders' potential. Visit alextremble.com and book me to speak at your next event, and let's make your next event unforgettable together. And now, with no further ado, can I say today is a good day. See, today we have the always immaculately dressed globetrotter, Miss Wendy R. Bradford. Miss Wendy serves as the Senior Vice President of Human Resources and Culture at Counterpart International. She brings to the organization expertise in strategic planning, talent acquisition, compensation, benefits, human resource processes, performance management, employee relations, conflict resolution. Look, I don't know if we got enough time to keep listing all the things that she brings to the table, but both domestically and internationally. Ms. Bradford is responsible for overall domestic and international human resource functions. And prior to this role at Counterpart International, she served as the Vice President of Human Resources and Operations at QED Group, where she directed all the people functions of the organization, including talent acquisitions, orientation, employee relations, compensation, benefit. Again, I don't know if I can hold my breath long enough to talk about all the stuff she'd be doing. And then finally, look, let's just get going. How are you doing today, madam?
I'm doing fine. You make me sound spectacular. Thank you.
Look, it's so easy, though. You make it so easy. I've been wanting to talk to you again for so long, just because not only obviously the years of expertise and thought leadership you bring to the table, but you're just a bright, shining, like, personality, wonderful person. So you're awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that compliment.
You're very welcome, madam. Now let's dive into the hard-hitting questions.
Yeah.
So that was short-lived. So if I can ask you, you just came back from globetrotting. So in your role, you get to not only, yes, you get to travel, but you are working with and helping people and organizations with many different cultures, not only culturally within like the culture context, like, oh, this is the organization's culture, but literally different other cultures across the world. I just want to start with asking the question, is there something that you see out there being outside the US, that organizations are doing that you feel like, you know what, we really should be adopting this over here in the US country? Is there anything you've been seeing that's standing out?
Well, I had visited 4 countries, 3 of them in Africa, one of them in Timor, in Indonesia. And our team in that country, one of the things that I saw them doing in there is that they all came together on one accord, and they were singing one of CeCe Winans' songs. Gosh, now the song eludes me, but they were singing it in the office. And then we went on a 2-day retreat and they were singing it in the retreat. Now, I love that song. And I was remembering the words and I was just singing it with them, and my eyes were closed, my hands were raised. Um, and they were raised in a sense because it was a religious song, it was a gospel song. And I thought, wow, they're all doing this in their culture at work.
Yeah.
And what I thought was so pleasing for that is that, first of all, we established as part of our culture that people can feel safe in what they're doing. They have psychological safety to show up and be who they are in their authentic selves. And I know that people have different thoughts about the word authentic selves, but authentic in the sense that you can be who you are without being disrespectful, being tactful and professional. And in this sense, they were all singing a gospel song. And next thing I know, a mic was in front of me. And well, hey, I am not, Whitney Houston or anything, but you put a mic in front of me, I will sing.
Get 'em.
Okay, I've been singing in the choir since I was a little, like 5 years old. But again, I'm no Whitney Houston, but I love to sing for the Lord. And it was that part of our culture that I really enjoyed seeing our staff enjoy. So when we talk about the culture of our organization is showing up who you are in your authentic selves and being able to do it without intrepidation of being judged or wondering, can I do it? Can I not do it?
Yeah.
And being able to do that without you being disrespectful to anyone else in the organization. It was wonderful. And what I would love to see us to be able to do that in the US is to just do it.
Yeah.
We have so many legal things of the do's and don'ts in the workplace that you really can't show up the way you really want to, being your authentic self. So we always have to have that as a halo over our mind before we do or say anything, which is kind of sad sometimes because I think we miss out on a lot of things in our work environment when we have to do that. So I wish I could bring that back.
No, I love it and I appreciate it. I'm gonna double down on it. I work with a lot of individuals who work in the DEI space and in the HR space. And one of the things they consistently tell me behind closed doors is that they're afraid to do their job.
Mhm.
Because if they say the wrong thing,
Mhm.
someone will come after them. Oh, why did you say this? You're impacting these people. And it's, again, I understand impact and intent are different. I completely understand. And people can absolutely, really, truly harm someone.
Mhm.
But if the other way is around, you create a culture or environment where everyone's walking on eggshells because they're just afraid they're going to accidentally say the wrong thing. And now everyone's coming on, calling them this, that, and this and that. I believe that ultimately contributes to us being less united than what the intent is for us to bring people together.
Mm-hmm. You are so right in that. And in HR, we are always, I don't want to say walking a thin line, but we always have to be careful of what we're doing, when we're doing it, what we say, who we're saying it to, what audience are we talking to. Because even if someone plays it back in another environment, if you catch it on something you put on your LinkedIn or on your Facebook or your Instagram or whatever, and even though it could be your right to do that, especially in a religious space, of your beliefs and everything. And then when you bring it back into the space of work, even in DEI, instead of people embracing your difference of opinion and things that you believe in, if it doesn't match up with their beliefs or maybe your organization's belief, it could be pretty traumatizing. And some people can lose their jobs because of it. And so that's when I think when people say their authentic selves, well, we kind of get it a little murky because you really can't in that regard. And so you're always making sure that you're showing up, saying the right things. And so the question is, are you really showing up your authentic self? Because the truth of the matter is you're only to a certain extent. allowed to by society. And so even though here in my organization at Counterpart, we want our staff to show up and thrive and be who they are and embrace the difference, even if we don't agree. But even then, still, I know people still hold some things back because they're not sure of how far they can go because of that issue.
There was so I was speaking at the African American Federal Executive Association, their annual leadership conference a couple weeks ago now. And someone brought up, actually one of the panelists brought up, that she was, let me be careful. Someone brought up that they were going after a job opportunity. And before they walked into the interview, someone who already worked there was on the side, was like, hey, you gonna change, you're gonna change your hair, right? You're not gonna be walking like this, right? And she's like, oh, really? And she changed her hair, got the job. And some people are like, why would you, shouldn't you be your authentic self? And she was like, look, the reality was the person who was helping her, 100% helping her, because she knew the hiring manager was never going to go for it. And they got into it. And the woman says she has done so much good for that organization, taught them so much. But to your point about being our authentic selves, I don't think we're ever 100% ourselves in almost any environment. Like, there are pieces of me that honestly I don't show my mom, because I respect my mom. Me and my best friend will be doing stupid stuff. There's certain stuff. My mom is not my friend. She'll be real quick to tell you, I am not one of your low friends. So, and the same thing at work. There are certain things you can do at home that you can't do at work. Like, I think there's this idea of two things can be true, and it's just like, we have to, as people, as leaders, we have to be able to work in the gray. We can't say, oh, this is good, this is bad. No, life is always contextual as to what's going on and where you're at.
Yes. And to that point, we just have to, I think, look at how we really need to show up in the workplace. I think we can still be our authentic selves. I don't think we have to be two-faced, as we used to say growing up. You're one way at work and another way at home. I don't think you have to be that way. And particularly in our organization, we're saying show up who you are, the way you are. Now, I think with any organization, you still have to show up the way that organization wants to be represented. Okay. You can't show up and represent yourself in a way that's contrary to your organization. That's a career on its way to death. Okay. So that's the reality of it. And who wants to do that, right? We do want to show up to do our best, to show what we have, because that's what we were hired to do, the job that we were hired to do. Yeah. We weren't hired to show two faces, right? We were hired to show the company in its best light. And I think that's the important thing that we have to recognize. I don't think that changes the culture. I don't think that means that we're not able to really show up the way we want to show up in our authentic selves. Let's really put that into perspective, because we do have to show up for work. Now, once that person got into the organization, now that they've shown what they could do and people respecting them and trusting them for what they bring, now perhaps they're in a position where maybe they can introduce different things, such as different hairstyles and things of that nature, because then people are appreciating them for what they bring and not looking at them for whatever they don't agree with in their look. They're looking past that and getting to what's important, and that's what they're bringing to the organization. And I'm not saying that's an easy thing either, because sometimes you can get up and show your authentic self and people don't agree with you, but that's the importance of diversity, us embracing the differences of one another. We don't have to agree with one another, but we can at least have a way forward, knowing that, sure, we have differences of opinion, but does that really stop us from doing our work? Does it stop us from performing, unless the issue that we are disagreeing on is the result that we're looking for? Then we have to figure out, how do we come to agreement on that? So I'm not talking about the illegal things of the world. I'm not talking about showing up the way you're not supposed to show up. Let's keep it in perspective. But there is a way that we all need to bring ourselves to work, and that is to show up and perform at our best according to what the company hired us to do.
It's funny. I want to keep on that conversation. You just said, of course, I'm not talking about illegal. And for years, I had to give this disclaimer. I'm giving it now. of course, don't do anything illegal, immoral, and unethical. Don't do that. And I'm like, why do I gotta say this? Like, of course, when I'm talking and sharing ideas, I'm never gonna say it. But someone was like, well, you don't know. There could be that one person who's like, oh, okay, yeah, Alex said I could do whatever it takes. So
Yep.
that's actually cool. I caught you call that out because it's always that one person.
Uh-huh.
And you what you made me think about though is how do we look, these are unconscious bias. Generally speaking, I come from a place where I believe that the vast majority of people are good people. The vast majority of people are just doing the best they know how to do. They don't got the same tools in their toolkit that maybe you got, that maybe I got, and so on and so forth. So they're doing the best they can do. And so they're always also working with many unconscious biases. Sometimes they don't think they're doing something wrong, but they're definitely doing something wrong, right?
Mhm.
So how do you navigate your space of being authentic while also knowing that people harbor unconscious biases, which may impact your career growth or whether someone's listening to your ideas or not?
That's a good question, because since I head HR, there are some pros and cons to that, right? The pros to that is that I have basically the mic and leadership in that, and what I say and how I represent the organization. And so, as I call it, being at the top of the food chain, to be able to influence things and being able to address things that some people in different positions may not feel comfortable addressing. But even I still am very cognizant of being respectful to people when I'm addressing those issues. So I might feel very comfortable going up to someone and saying, well, I noticed you said this in the meeting, or I noticed this about you, or that. But I'm also addressing it in a way that I'm hopefully being very respectful to the person I'm talking to, but also coming to them in my human way and saying, here's what I recognize, and here's how I think this is affecting X, Y, and Z. And can we conversate? Can we talk about it? And so I try and present myself in a way that allows them to show up with psychological safety, being able to speak openly with me, knowing that I'm not going to prejudge them or send them, as my sign back here says, be nice or I'll send you to a meeting. That could be any kind of meeting, right? But what I do is I just show up and I just try and pull the elephant out of the room, and I'll say what I think people are thinking of. And if they say, okay, Wendy, you're right, then I go, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about that thing. Let's see, is this something that's hindering us? Is this something that's helping us? Let's talk about it. And I think when you're doing that and showing up authentically like that, and I'm helping people to relax their guard, knowing that I'm not coming after them or coming for them. I don't come for people, by the way. As they say, you can't come for me because I didn't call for you, right? But I'm not talking about in that regard. I'm talking about just calling the elephant out in the room and talking about those things that we don't want to talk about. And if people can know, they can leave the room knowing that they've been heard and that they can trust me with the information that they share, because my purpose is in how do we move from here? How do we get past what I just heard? So I'm not coming to judge them or make them feel bad or say, hey, you did something wrong. The whole thing is to have a conversation. That's what I promote here at our organization, is that our differences don't have to be the end of things. Our differences don't have to keep us apart. Our differences don't need to divide us. Our differences can bring us together so we can have a conversation and figure out a way forward. We still may not agree. We still might differ on the subject, but we can still come together to figure out how to move forward together while still embracing our own differences. And that is what we do here at our organization, because I want people to feel that sense of belonging. And they can't feel that sense of belonging if I'm putting up roadblocks or making them feel a certain way. Now, I have no control over people's feelings. I don't. Only we're in control of our feelings. But I can present myself, or try to present myself, in such a way that I'm not coming threateningly, that I'm really coming authentic and genuine. Genuine is actually the word I'm looking for, to really have an open conversation. Because when we're not pulling the elephant out of the room, we're not really getting anywhere. Or are we getting anywhere? I mean, we need to ask ourselves those questions, because if we're not talking about the things that we're not talking about, we're not really getting the results that we're looking for, and we're skirting around the issues. And we need to make sure that we're putting people in a place where they're feeling really comfortable and having that psychological safety to talk to even those of us who lead HR. Because sometimes we're the last people that people will go to, because people will figure if I say the wrong thing, I'm going to get in trouble with Wendy. And I'm like, no, let's talk about it. You're not in trouble. Let's talk about it, because these are real conversations, because this is our world that we live in, and we're the ones that bring the culture to our organization. It's not a word or a thing that's imputed onto us. We're the ones who bring it out. And what better way to bring it out by talking about the things that are hard to talk about? And that's our differences.
You know, okay, so again, you said so much. I love it. I spoke to a chief people officer the other day of a Fortune 500 company that I'm working with, and we started talking about relationships. And exactly what you said, he talked about how, he was there for the staff, and he wanted to create a space where they felt comfortable talking to him, and so on and so forth. And he was like, look, as the chief people officer, as the VP of human resource, like those roles, they're lonely because generally people don't want to talk to you about certain, can only get themselves in trouble, and you can't share a lot of things you cannot talk about, and you can't even share with your other executive members, right? Because there's certain things you just can't share. And so we talked about the importance. We talked about, one, how difficult and how lonely it can be in these roles, but then also the importance of being intentional about building your own community, who you can talk to. Maybe you can't get into specifics, but you can trust and build relationships with. And that's a lot of the work I do and teach on and speak on. But what are your thoughts? What are your reactions to that, what I just shared?
My reaction is that it's very true. And so you have to figure out, how do you surround yourself with people who you can really speak with? You don't have to get very specific about the specifics of issues going on in your organization to have that conversation, because first of all, if you do, people will go, yeah, I understand, because they generally have the same issues that you have in your organization. But because there are legalities, there is confidentiality, and things that you have to keep private, you can't really relate them back to your organization per se. However, it doesn't mean you can't have conversations with people within your network. And there's generally organizations that we all belong to, different organizations where we meet people at our same level, and we just talk about things in generalities. And that's how we end up helping one another, by talking about it in general. We don't relate it back to our organizations, because we don't want to get into trouble legally. We don't want to breach confidentiality, and we are always making sure that we're maintaining people's privacy and securing that information. So eventually, I have a great boss. I'll have to say that. I do. And I can talk to her about a lot of things. But even then, with her, running the organization and everything, there's certain things that I also shield her from, that I have to do that. So there's certain things that I shouldn't discuss, just for her protection, because that's what we do in HR. We protect, we cover both ends, all ends of the organization. And that's a balancing act in itself. So many times you just have to be able to surround yourself around trusted individuals. And that could be a very small group of people. It could actually be a large group of people who you're talking to without your camera on, without your name, without your organization's name. And you can join them, in having those confidential discussions, I would say. It's like I bring up, I don't know if I can name organizations, but I do belong to an organization I've been belonging to a number of years in human resources. And they have an executive network. And we have monthly meetings, and we can talk about any subject. We can talk about any subject. And it's like we're crowdsourcing to help other HR leaders deal with some of the issues in their organization, because you don't really have anyone else to talk to other than your legal counsel. And when you talk to them, that comes with a bill. So you should be able to talk to your cohort and your networks to be able to help you with some things. And I'm not saying look for them for legal advice, even though I do have lawyers in my network. I'm just saying it's just good to have them as part of your network, because you need psychological safety in that group, and you need an outlet. Because many times us as HR leaders, we have to hold it all in. I was a victim of my own self, saying I always had to be right. I had to make sure I gave the correct advice, because if I don't, I can get us into trouble legally. And so when I say a victim of myself in that, is because that's the profession. You have to give out correct information. You can't be wrong. That right there is stressful in itself, because we want to protect our companies, we want to protect our employees, and we want to give the best advice that we can give. That's not only the best advice, but that's helpful. Because no one wants to give advice that's not used or doesn't do anyone any good. So, it's like all those things that we're harboring inside for our own level of insecurities, and those things that we do feel good about, but still have to be very careful about. And it's lonely at the top, as they say. And I talked to my boss, who's right at the top, and I'm like, it's even more lonely where she is. So
get her a puppy for Christmas.
Yes. HR leaders always have that to grapple with, but we also have to find an outlet for ourselves, whatever that outlet is, to make sure, excuse me, that we're not going to burn out. I've burned out a few times, but because I just refuse to burn out completely, I pull myself back up, because I know what ways I know how to do that for myself. And I say that because I know there are a lot of HR professionals that do burn out. But we love our profession, and either we stay in it for the long term, or we leave and do something else and come back, or we leave and get healthy and come back as well. So yes, I said all of that because it's true.
Well, can I ask, because there's another question I want to slide in here, but first, you mentioned something really cool. I don't think most people realize. So like in the jobs that I've held, overseeing HR and culture myself, that was also part of my job, was to protect, to defend, to know when to push something up, when to not, when to protect by, not putting something up. I'm not sure everyone understands that piece of the job. Is there another piece of the job that you think most people just don't know actually happens, but it's part of that senior HR officer role?
Well, it is hard to know when to push things up. Especially, I wouldn't say it's hard. Let me say it's not hard. I think it becomes hard if you allow ego, and if you're always trying to make yourself look good, and to know everything, and that you're the expert in everything. There's not one person here on earth, no HR leader. There could be HR leaders. They're experts. Like you have experts, you have benefits experts, and all of that. I'm a generalist, so I know a little bit about everything, but I also know when to go for help. I know when I need to call my legal counsel. I know when I need to call on my team to research and do something. If you, it's a certain word I'm looking for. It's just not coming to mind right now, but if you allow yourself to get into that trap, you will never know when to push things up. You need to know when to push them up, or when to talk to your colleagues and even your own staff to help you to grapple with issues and to come up with solutions. And if you're not sure when to do that because you figure there's no psychological safety or there's no trust there, get a mentor or coach and ask them. Everyone has coaches these days, right? There's always a platform that's always talking about, hire me as your coach. Here's what I can do. I always get many of those emails for coaches. But what I'm saying is that confide in someone to get help, we at all levels can always use additional education. We don't all know it all. I don't think we're going to know it all until we leave this earth. But until we leave this earth, we're always learning, we're always pursuing, and we're always thriving to be our better selves. And in order to do that, sometimes you just need to know when to call it. And if you're not sure, confide in someone, or even talk to your boss. And hopefully you have a boss who you can connect with, someone who you can talk to and confide these things and say, hey, I'm just not sure if I should say this or that, but here's the dilemma. And then they can let you know for your organization, because each organization is different. Let me say that, because some things that you push up in one organization, another organization might say, well, I think you need to handle that yourself, or I think you need to go talk to a colleague, and then or your counterpart. And then other organizations, they're like, wait a minute, we need to know everything. So
Yeah.
it's those things. I think you just need to know who you're working for, the culture of your organization, what they're expecting. And if you're not sure, ask. There's nothing wrong with asking. We don't need to know it all. We don't have to know it all.
So there's two more questions I want to slide in here to see if I can get them in. The first, and this is the first one's a big question. So you do your best and we'll see. It's a big question. So my team and I were leading an executive retreat a few weeks ago now. Great group. The group was wonderful. There's so much freaking fun too. And something got brought up about the organization, staff not trusting national leadership at this organization. And when we dove into that, I was like, well, are there any legs there? And they're like, well, look, yeah, if we're being honest, we've done stuff. We will share information halfway, right? We won't tell them everything, but we share halfway. But the reason why we share halfway is because every time we share all the information, people freak out. And we tell them, like, look, we don't know everything yet, but this is how we have. And people freak out and it becomes an issue. So we learned then to not give everything, just tell them the basics of what we think they need. And then they say, well, you didn't tell us everything. And so now you're hiding stuff from us, and it allows them to then not be trusted. I'd love to hear, what are your thoughts in regards to when organizations, especially at the national level, regional level, so on, and local levels, when they're trying to establish trust within the organization, a culture of trust, but at the same time, there's also a history that things blow up if you share too much information, and people want that information.
That's a loaded question, because there are various ways that you can answer that. But I'm going to start with the most simplest way. And that is having the right people, having the right conversations about that. So I'm the type of HR leader that I'll call the elephant out in the room. I don't do it disrespectfully. I do it very tactfully. And I'll just say, here's what's going on. This is what we're grappling with. As a matter of fact, this is a true story. My boss and I, we were grappling with trust issues with our organization. And we were trying different things, different methods and everything. And sometimes we were getting it right. Sometimes we were not. And then I said, hey, we just need to ask. And it's a simple thing. And of course, it's in an employee engagement survey, keeping it anonymous and allowing staff to talk so they can say what they need to say. And we said, we need to hear from you, because we've tried different things that we thought were addressing the issue to help build trust. And we were missing the mark. Sometimes we were getting it right. Sometimes we were not. So we want to do it anonymously so you will feel comfortable with helping us to figure this out. And they did that. And now, 4 years later, we have an organization where our trust level has increased. And it didn't increase because they did the survey. It increased because we listened to them and we made changes. We listened to the hard things. And so until an organization wants to hear the hard stuff, you're always going to have that issue, because employees are figuring, well, I need to tell you this information. I need to share it. But if you're not willing to listen, then I will never be able to share it. So that trust issue will always be an issue, because you're butting heads. Yeah. So someone, wherever it is that falls in that line of leadership, needs to bring up that hard conversation and have it with that right person. Now, sometimes we've read and heard in other organizations that sometimes it's the top person that's the problem, and you can't talk to them. And that's when you bring in experts, people like you, who talk to the heads of organizations, and you tell them, hey, look, you're the problem. And sometimes when they hear that, they're fine with it, and they go, okay, tell me more, and it works, or they go against it. And, we've read stories about that too. My simple answer is that you have to talk about the elephant in the room and choose the right person who can have that conversation, because not everyone can have the conversation.
I think yes, that was a very big and loaded question, but I think I loved your answer, and on multiple different levels. So one, generally speaking, listen to people, right? There was another organization that's going through a huge political turmoil within the organization. And everyone loved the director, but no one believed what was going on because there was just no information being shared. I was like, dude, like, not dude, but, you're having a good conversation over, over lunch. Like, if you just listen to them, like, just hold an all hands meeting, just see what people have in this answer. And if you don't know the answer, tell them, I don't know the answer. I'll look into it.
Mm-hmm.
And he did 2 of those and got right back to me. Was like, Alex, this is really great. Because they were worried that, oh, what if we don't know the answer? Like, then we just tell them we didn't know the answer, but we're gonna get back to them. Like, people really responded to it. So asking the question, letting people feel heard, absolutely. To your other part is sometimes the internal leader is not the right messenger. Sometimes you have to bring in an external person. And many times, and this is why I like working with HR leaders, is because I can be the bad guy. And it's weird, but people take things differently from the external person than the internal person. And then there's also, I don't have to deal with internal politics. I don't got to worry about my job. So everyone can say, oh, tell me everything. And then you tell them everything and they're like, oh, I don't like you anymore. We're going to. So that's a reality. So then, okay. You are so awesome. Okay. But one last question, I'm going to slide them in there.
Sure.
So as I've been asking everyone, most people who move into these C-suite level positions, VP positions, senior VP positions, are the first in their families to be in those types of spaces with those types of resources. And as I've been talking to many of my coaching clients, they always share kind of an angst around whether they're doing the right thing in raising their kids, whether they're spoiling them, whether they're being too hard, whether they're just not sure. So my thought is we're going to keep asking this question for at least the next year and get everyone's responses, and then we can just give everyone a playbook. So for you, what are your recommendations on how to raise a good person, given what you have attained and achieved in your life?
Well, first of all, I don't think the stories are too old when you say, I used to walk 100 miles to go to school each day.
Uphill, both ways.
Yes, I am of that generation, right? Well, at least my parents were of that generation. And my dad, he was an entrepreneur. He built houses. He remodeled houses. And so even though we didn't grow up posh, rich or anything, but we used to count his payroll for him. But it gave us a sense of respecting money and respecting things. So even though I grew up here in Washington, D.C., like I said, we weren't rich or anything. We were an average family and all. And so we didn't have back then it was Jordache and Sassoon jeans, Gloria Vanderbilt jeans. So we didn't wear all of the back then designer clothing, but we learned how to understand money and respect money. And so growing up and going through school, and yes, I have my MBA and everything with the specialization in human resources. Our children, as we were raising them, sure, when we went to restaurants, it was, oh, order what you want. When I was growing up, it was, can I have this? Can I have that? And when I found that our children were not asking, I looked at my husband and I said, wait a minute, I don't think that they're really understanding how hard we really work to be where we are. Yeah. And they're not really understanding that. And so we had to start removing privileges to help them to understand that just because you're growing up in an environment where you have more than we had, because we all want to provide more for our kids than we had, right? But we needed them to still understand the value of money and hard work. And that even though gifts back, in those days was the, iPods and iPads and, whatever the Nintendo thing is my daughter loved, those things don't come for free. You have to do chores. You have to work for them. So even though we're in the positions that we're in, we still have to work hard to remain here. You don't get here and just stay here because you got a pretty face or you had a good idea. There's that book, What Got You There Won't Get, or What Got You Here Won't Get You There. So you still have to maintain what you've earned. You still have to learn and you still have to be productive in society. You can't just take, you have to give. What is it that you're giving to society? Because you find that the more you give, the happier you are as a person. It is not always what you get that makes you happy. It's what you give to someone else to help them in life, not necessarily to get where you are, to attain what you have, but to enhance their life.
Yeah.
You know, we want to love and be respectful, love people and be respectful of them. How are you going to show up? And that's what I would say in helping to raise good humans, to help them think about what is it that I can do to help someone else in this world. I achieved what I've achieved so I can be in a good position to be able to do that. Okay. You can do that in any position you are, whether you have money or you don't have money, because you don't necessarily need to have money to make someone's day.
Mm-hmm.
However, having money is in a good position to be able to do a whole lot more for people. And so what I tell my grown-ups, they're now grown now, and all four of them, is what are you giving back to society? What can you do for them? And that's how we wanted to raise our children, to give back. So attain what you want to attain, achieve, meet your goals, set them first, meet them, and then what are you going to do to help enhance society to make it better?
Okay, I'm gonna play this for my little boy. He just turned 11 months. He just turned a year, actually. So he got to get on his P's and Q's. He is so freaking cute. It's really quickly. I will say, because this is past Father's Day now. It was supposed to be Father's Day, but man, if that guy did not want to be all over his mom the entire day, I don't think I got my real Father's Day. I'm not sure.
Alex, you have to look at it from a different view, a different attitude. He was trying to be with mama to give you the day off so you can rest.
Oh, she found stuff for me to do. What's going on? Yeah, Wendy, thank you so much for joining. You're so amazing. I want to open the floor. Is there anything you'd like to share with the audience as we begin to wrap up?
You know, the human resource profession, it is a wonderful profession. My daughter one day said to me when she was really young, she says, "Mom, I don't want to do what you do." And I said, "Why not?" She says, "You work long hours and I'm always wondering when you're coming home." And so I had to make space for her. I had to make time. And our kids, they help us to remember the important things in life. And so I just want to say to my fellow human resource professionals, make sure you're enjoying life. Smell the roses, literally smell the roses, take vacation. We're always pushing other people to take vacation and being healthy. We're putting together all these programs, wellness programs, and all these things we do for other people. We have to make sure that we take our own advice. And so I want to leave that with my fellow human resource professionals, my network, my boom, ace boom coon people, that we need to make sure that we take care of ourselves, because we do it for other people all the time. And we end up wondering why we're burned out. It's not because of all the work we do. It's because we don't always take care of ourselves. And we need to make sure we put ourselves first sometimes. So that's what I like to leave with the audience today.
Look, Wendy, man, you are so, everyone, I need you to do me a favor. Just rewind this like 30 seconds, a minute back, and listen to that again. And I'm being completely honest. Again, I'm blessed that the vast majority of people I work with and I'm around care about other people. They truly care about other people and the mission and the vision and all those things. And I'm like, look, just as much as you care about other people, you need to care about you. Your self-help is important. Your health is important. Thank you so much for saying that, Wendy, because you're spot on. Everyone, look, do me a favor real quick, and I will know, and Santa Claus will know whether you did this or not. Please click that like, click the subscribe, go on and share it with one or two people today. If you found anything of value, let us know in the comment section, in the chat box. We want to see and hear what you're thinking, because this helps us also decide what content to bring to the table. Don't just look back, just look back, reach back. So as always, I encourage everyone, stay strong, stay positive, and definitely stay moving. See ya. Thanks for listening to The Executive Appeal with Alex Tremble. I invite you to follow The Executive Appeal wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow me, your host, Alex Tremble, across all socials or via email for exclusive webinars, courses, and speaking engagements on continued topics of executive leadership. So until next time, stay strong, stay positive, and definitely stay moving.